right, everybody, we got another very special guest for you all. I want everybody to welcome to the show Timothy Fling. How we doing, Tim?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. I'm real excited about it.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here because we just learned that little tidbit about the maps and stuff. So I want to hear all the crazy stuff and awesome stories that you're making. You have a little bit of news for us at the end too. But Tim, this is your first time on the show, so let's get your origin story of what got you into comics. Where did it all begin for you?
Sure. My name's Tim Fling. I'm a comic book writer and creator. And I started, I guess you'd say officially, in 2015 or so. And I'd always kind of been a short story writer, and I never really got too much traction there. And I had written a script, was what it was, it was going to be an animated television show. And this was for a robot rock band that was called Socket. Right. And it was kind of sort of awesome. Like a humorous. Yeah. They were sort of like, Simpsons level-ish, sort of zany robot rock musicians. Right. And each one had like a little bit of stereotype. Like one was the Asian guy and he knew Kung Fu. And then one was the Irishman and he was always drinking and smoking.
Yep.
And but we never could get the script. We got it to these pitch meetings and you kind of like say your piece. And even that, like a separate fella from me does it. I just wrote the script, see. And, same thing, I couldn't get it rolling. Well, by 2015 or so, there was people that were already starting to make their own independent books. Well, of course, they've been doing it for a while, but it became easier for what I call guys like me, maybe sort of at the bottom, right, to make a product. And, as Kickstarter started to get them out into the world, so to speak. Right. My first thing that I did, and this was, God bless him, there was a fellow by the name of Martin Dunn, and he had a small press that he ran out of Brooksville, Florida. He's a well-known musician too, right? He's got his punk act that he tours with, Less Than Expected. And one of the things he did, it was called the Bullpen. And what he would do, he would take, say, for example, if you had a script written or a character treatise, he would pair you with somebody and sort of guide you through this process of, hey, here's how you can make and publish your independent comic book. Sort of show you the ropes, you might say, right?
Yeah.
So I was at a free comic book day, and I sort of stumbled across him. And he had this was in Tampa, Florida, and he had a Miracle Man tattoo, old school Miracle Man. Are you a Miracle Man fan? So right away, I hit it off with the guy, and we were talking.
That's how you knew this guy reads comics.
Yeah, and he gets into this business, how he's got this small press, and they got a couple. They were putting out a title called Joshua Black, which got some pretty good press, as I recall. And he said to me, well, hey, if you have this script, why don't you send it over to me and I'll take a look at it, And, I gave it to him, and to be honest, I didn't think too much of it at the time. And he gave me a call about a month later, and man, I still remember it like yesterday. He was like, Tim, this is Martin. We're going to make your comic book here, and there's going to be this robot rock band and blah, blah. And of course, we ended up doing, I think it was 3 issues of that. And then I started in with what we said at the time was, you learn how to do these little projects, I call them. Mm-hmm. It's all about your team that you build and what kind of loyalty you can prescribe among your team. And some of the pages that we got, it was really turning out better than we kind of guessed it would go. So then we said, hey, you know what we should do? Let's kind of lean into this sci-fi thing a little bit more. I wouldn't call it hard sci-fi, Star Wars-ish, Mad Max-ish type sci-fi, and do the top illustrators in the world and the best cover designers and the blah, 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 right? Yeah. And then that became Water Wars 2288. And that was and the Hunchback was in there as well too. These are all, somewhat linked characters. And we put them on Kickstarters, of course, And once we got everything going, it was making just enough money to keep putting it forward to the next issue. And we're just about up to number 3 here, which will actually be our 4th Kickstarter, which is kind of hard to believe. I just started this a year and a half ago, but it's all about, if you have the right team, right, it really gels together and it goes fast.
Yeah. And you said something a little to us before we started recording that you pretty much have it all set up to where it, like when you do the Kickstarter, you're ready to go. Like it's all set and you just need to get the books or it's all finished up, right?
One thing that I do that's a little different, and hey, I'm not disparaging anybody the way they make their books, you understand?
Mm-hmm. Yep. Right.
But I couldn't take the money ahead of when I had almost the whole thing in the can, and I tell you why. Because things can sometimes go a little sideways with art or lettering or colors. There's a lot of moving parts there for a little bit. So I kind of wait until, I'll be honest with you, I wait till all colors are done and lettering at least halfway done.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. like a week or 2 weeks left. And my reason for that is, once you get talking to your backers, you can get a really bad reputation if you don't. You get a bad reputation if you don't follow through on the dates that you said, and if you want to be well ahead of them is actually what you want to try and do. And the better you do that, the more credibility I think you might have as a small publisher. I think that's one man's opinion.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing more of that now. Now, I mean, when Chris and I would first start talking to people about Kickstarters, sometimes it was like iffy if the book was going to be finished in time, but I think nowadays with all shipping issues and stuff, people like to have it all ready to go before they start, getting people all excited about it. At least that's what I've seen. But yeah,
I've seen that more and more where people won't even start the Kickstarter till the book's either done or, like you said, to that point. Because that's the issue is when you're on Kickstarter, you're living by your word, and that's all you really have.
Yeah. And, I don't have, the hundreds of thousands of followers or anything like that, fellas. Like I said, I'm kind of new, right?
Yep.
By which I mean in that 5-year bracket I've been doing this. But but the reception has gone better than we guessed. And when I say the sales, I mostly gauge that by how the Kickstarter performed versus what you spent on making the darn Kickstarter, which we got a lot of expenses for that too, and we do at least one convention a year, which is Baltimore. But the responses have been great, and like I was telling you, the next thing is reaching out for these submissions to have the short stories published in other anthologies that are coming out, both as other indie comic anthologies or other small publishers, which are pretty known by now too.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about the first Kickstarter. Was that the Hunchback, or was that
was the Hunchback, right? And that was what we had done there. That was the one. Like I said, I guess you could describe it as we were trying to be a little more serious, right? And that's a wordless graphic novel. It's just the story of the robot. Yeah, you read the story just with the sound effects and watching what the little robot does as he goes through. It's like a 19-pager or something. It's a pretty good story. So and it was really kind of visually inventive and hand painted. And we said, hey, let's make this special thing, and we'll do Kickstarters, right? And then that one funded successfully, and I started small. I guess that was 1,000, or maybe it was 1,500. And then we went to the next one, which was Water Wars #2. I had already made #1 by then.
Okay.
And I think that did, I think 3,300. And then we just did the Lost at Sea book, which is the poetry quoting sea captain and robot Marilyn Monroe. And that one did $4,400, right? So now I have #3 getting ready to go into this, into the pipeline, as we say.
Right.
My next goal should realistically be, hey, I should hit $5,000. But what I do for mine, because remember, the Kickstarter is in effect an all or nothing platform, meaning if you don't hit your goal, and plus there's all that stress. So I set the goal as, the name of the book is Water Wars 2288. And I set the goal for $2,288. And I tell you, that's one of the reasons why I always like to recoup as much as, like for me, it wouldn't be very cost advantageous if I set the goal high and then didn't get any of my costs back.
Right.
So I'm willing to, So I'm willing to set my goal lower in the hopes that I'll get, bare minimum of printing for our size is going to be $1,500, $2,000 at the smallest, probably.
Yep.
So, you got to kind of keep the engine running, to keep the next book coming out. So,
it sounds like you have a following now. I mean, you've grown it every Kickstarter to be on your 4th one, and you funded 3 in a row. So it seems like it can happen, right?
You know what? I'm real happy to say that, because I've been sort of lucky. Like I say, I didn't start with a big following or anything like that, but I've noticed now my small one that I have, they follow me to each. Like my latest Kickstarter was something like 60% of the people came back, or some crazy number like that. So
that's cool, man.
Yeah. So I'm pretty, and one of the things that we do, I'll be happy to tell you guys, is that, at the end, it's all about the highest quality product that you send to the backers. And ours is all about making it look like it was $1 million stuff. Like we do the chrome enhanced maps. We do the we call the radioactive logo, which is their chrome, but with look like lightning hitting it, stuff like that.
Okay.
And there's even a couple of expanded content things we do, which is usually in the form of like a cover gallery, or we also have the trading cards that go with it.
Okay. Tell us about that map again, because you were explaining that a little bit to us.
What we do, it's like first of all, it's a map of the U.S., and it's intended to be the post-apocalyptic U.S. And this is the kind of thing somebody might like. The main person is probably, if you like Fallout 4 or any of the Fallout games, it's very much in the flavor of that, okay? Except that it says it shows the journeys and whatnot of the characters in the Water Wars universe instead of any other story.
Yeah.
And it shows the the robot uprisings, and there's a place where the government's burying bodies and stuff like that. And what we've done for the collectible, the first one came out, and that
the
just
government
showed
does.
Yeah. In our version, the government is totally evil and dystopian.
So historical fact is what.
Yeah, you're right, man. You're right.
Pretty close.
I'll tell you, there was some. One part, interestingly, that sort of changed in the book that was edited out. Originally, it tells the story, right, where there's this pandemic and everybody's forced by the government to go into these things and they had to wear masks.
Yeah.
And you know what? I trimmed all that section out because, first of all, you didn't want to be offensive to anybody that already had COVID, right?
Right.
Because in this thing, they were even saying, E76 is a hoax, this pandemic. People are rising up. And it wasn't an allegory on anything. This was written back in 2018.
Wow.
So it was just one of those weird things where it sort of matched.
That's crazy.
I took out all the stuff where people were wearing their masks. We just kind of moved right past that part. You know what I mean? And we tried to emphasize the elements that were more fantastic. Like there's a genetic minotaur, there's robot sentry systems. So we focus on that stuff instead of the.
It's crazy how all that happens.
I'm sorry. Did you ever hear about the show Utopia?
Yeah, I remember that. The Netflix, you mean?
I think it was Amazon, but whatever. Mike, have you heard of this?
No, I haven't.
So this is a show that came out at the beginning of the pandemic, and the whole premise of it was that there was some sort of disease, and a rich billionaire came up with a vaccine that ended up sterilizing people because he wanted to deal with like population control and everything. And they had a insight. The people of this community came together, and they had an insight to what was happening because of a comic book. And it got canceled real quick because everybody's just like, the COVID hit like right as it was airing and everything, and people are just like, holy crap.
That's crazy how that happens. Like you made that part of your story and then you had to, change it at the last second.
And it was even a thing where we even had some like big splash panels drawn up. And I'll tell you what it was, because remember, you're trying to create bad guys. And one of the guys was like a guard with a gas mask on, and it was an old lady coming off like a refugee truck, and she coughs on him, and the soldier clubs the old lady to the ground. Oh, man. Which it's great when you're trying to make a villain, right?
Yeah,
but there was something about during COVID where it seemed tone deaf kind of, so I took it out.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't trying to say anything other than these are scary bad guys. So, it didn't make sense to maybe torment somebody. And especially once it became a thing, now that seems like everybody's getting COVID and getting better, thank God. But it's not, it isn't like before where it was like, oh my God, who will get it? Now at this point, half my friends have had it and got better from it.
Yeah, exactly. I know most people.
And you can get that same feeling with a different scene. Like that's not so crucial to the story that you couldn't just change it.
Right, exactly. Thanks for saying that, because really all that had to be said from the story was that she was escaping. We didn't have to show all the behind the scenes, so it kind of switches to that real quick.
So I guess we've gone in a little bit, but like something we haven't done is what's like the quick synopsis of what Water Wars is?
Okay,
like what this world is you created.
That's a great question. I'll answer it. Like I was saying before, I used to write short stories and try to write for collections and this and that. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool? By any chance, did either of you guys read the book World War Z, or you know what I'm talking about? It's like a collection, right, of these military stories bound together in one volume. And I remember thinking, it'd be cool if I ever wrote short stories. Maybe I could put them in this post-apocalyptic future world where essentially all the dystopias are happening at once, right? There's the pandemic, there's the giant insects, there's the robot revolution, the underwater New York City. Like, it's a bad 70s movie almost, right?
Yeah.
And that's kind of the aesthetic of it. And the heroines are always, if it's a 2288 title, you probably have an attractive female heroine. We got 3 characters, and they're not powers. Nobody has X-ray vision, but there are robots and, future types of things. And they're just trying to survive against these really unlikely scenarios in this future world. And it's all linked together as well. Like I was saying, how we do it, we take the short story and we convert it over to sometimes, 10-page to 18-page story. And then, so there's a beginning and an end all the time. But if you were to read a couple of the issues back to back, you can go along in chronicle order. And if you like that kind of stuff, it is tied together.
Okay. Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that people like about it, right? Because if you just want to see one, it's a full story in there. And it's usually at least 2 stories, if not 3. They're short stories is what they are. And the world is interconnected. So if you like the lore and stuff, well, the story of what that battle was and who was in it, yeah, that was in the last issue. Oh, that was the guy from it's that guy. Like, everybody's connected by one character, sort of.
So do you see, like, an Avengers moment where people come to get, like, different characters are coming together to fight for something, or is it just separate stories?
It's funny you say that because, when we make the Kickstarters, we're always trying to make something that backers will think is kind of cool. And one of the ideas was, and we took the idea from kind of how the Star Wars posters are made. It would be like a movie poster, but all the characters would be on the cover, their faces somehow. And it would be, the girls from the 2288 series. There's a sea captain. There's the robot you see behind me. Like, they would all be in kind of a full cast movie poster almost.
Yeah.
And the logo, there's 2 that are that way. And the other one is it's a Star Wars homage, the Hildebrandt original poster. We have an homage cover for number 4, and both have the logo at the bottom. Like, it'll look like it's going to say Star Wars at the bottom.
That's
but it'll
so
say
cool.
Water Wars 2288.
Oh man, I can't wait for that Kickstarter. Chris is like, yep, I'm funding.
That's coming.
All right.
That's coming.
That's amazing. So, like, this next installment, what would be the title? Is it's just part of the Water Wars?
Yeah, it's
titles?
volume 3.
Okay.
And there's always, we try to have a little something for everybody. The first thing is, if you're a digital person, which is our fastest growing thing, you always get a couple of little freebies if you're a digital version. What I mean by that, this will be in the form of, it'll be volume 3, and it'll come with 2 additional pages, which can be read. It's the director's cut for digital. It actually tells the same. In the print version, it's a splash that you look at in one splash. But that doesn't work on digital devices very well, right? So in the digital device, it'll be 2 9 panels, like in Watchmen, telling the same story element, which is the battle with the giant bug. But it's like an Alan Moore 9 panel.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And then the other thing that the digital backers get, they can download the maps, and also there's always a song that comes out for each new story that's loosely based on it. Say, for example, the last one was Robot City Blues, it's called, and the song it's like a traditional blues song, traditional 70s blues song, as if it was being played by a robot. So it's stuff like amazing. That, right? Yeah. So and now we're up to, I think we got I think it's 6 songs, 5 or 6 songs anyway, and each one is named after one of the chapters of the book. You see. So that's awesome. For the digital folks. And then as you get up into the print, your typical upgrades there are, we do the collectible maps. And if they get to a high enough goal, which they usually do, it's the chrome enhanced, which basically looks, radioactive or whatever. It's basically the elements are shiny that are silver on the map.
That's awesome.
It almost looks like it's made out of metal. It's just a thick stock cardboard, but it does have that look a little bit.
And I noticed, like, some of the other Kickstarters you did, you had like variant covers and like special covers and stuff like that. So you talk about that a little bit. Right.
One of the ways that you find success with these things is to do variant covers. And I used to be one of the guys that spoke out against variant covers, but of course now I realize when I say spoke out against it, that's probably not the right way to say it. But I remember thinking, well, hey, I'm a writer. I'm not going to do that. Right. It was somehow better. Yeah. Well, of course you see the economic realities. That's what customers like.
Right.
That's what you do. And what we usually do, there's usually one that's a wraparound cover. That's usually the basic one. There's one that looks like a movie poster a little bit. Okay. And there's one done by my friend Erwin Arosa, the fellow who did the Hunchback book, which is sort of like a moody, hand-painted Dave McKean looking kind of piece,
Okay.
right? And
Yeah.
he's the one who's currently doing this Star Wars homage, and it's going to be the same thing, but instead of Luke and Leia, it's the characters from it's the girls from Water Wars 2288. It's going to be so cool, man.
Yeah, that's
So
awesome.
we're excited to bring that to you. I'll have a preview of that in the next couple of days, probably.
Oh, that's so cool.
So you do the variant covers with your A cover. Do you have the interior artist do the A cover?
Yeah, usually. And in this case, he's Renan, my new partner. And first of all, I love him a lot. He's been a terrific add to the team, and I can't praise him enough. And he's paired with this Angel RD, this Venezuelan colorist that just is, they're killing it, man, this team.
Yeah. Yeah, so, that's awesome.
Yeah, the job they're doing is phenomenal. So we're going to run this way because they also make pages fast for a little bit. So yes, in this case, he not only has the cover, but he also, there'll be a second cover by him. You know, they say don't duplicate your guy during your variant covers like you might sell. I have duplicated mine. I don't know the answer to that. I'm all ears if somebody saw the numbers. But you know, to me, if the guy did a good job with it, he might do too. I'm more inclined to be loyal to the team I got. With Irwin during the Lost at Sea campaign, that was a concentrated effort to always use the same artwork. There was no other artist, variant or otherwise, and that was intentional. And that was more like an art project. It's a little bit, you know, highbrow, I guess, so to speak. Like I say, what we're trying to do with this Earth Dog Studios group is to emphasize the high quality sci-fi nature and the, you know, upgraded content in the Chrome, and it's all going to be super high quality. Anytime the Kickstarters fund over their funding amount, we put all the upgrades back into the thicker cover stock and the like when you get it in your hands, but oh man, this is like it'll feel different than the other books. And of course that's a marketing thing too, right? Yeah, because you get to a convention and whatnot, and you know, when you're at the level that I am, you're giving a lot of these away. You know, I submitted some to Marvel Comics. I'm going to take a swing at Image Comics or Todd McFarlane if I ever can get in front of him, you know, and that's what you do. That's how I got a little bit linked up with Ben Dunn from Antarctic Press. They weren't even having open submissions yet. And I'm reaching out. Hey, man, I just finished this book. Do you want to take a look at it? Because then you get some distribution, right? It gets to the other side of the country anyway. Which is
so you just
totally what I need.
Sent it out to publishers, and they said, "Oh, hell yeah, we want that." That's so cool.
Yeah, I kind of just took a swing because I don't really know anybody, you see. Or
Yep. Wow.
I've met some of the people at conventions and whatnot, and I've even met some of the publishers. But I'm kind of a small publisher now too, right? So
right.
Like, not in the wise guy way, but I sometimes got to take a look because maybe I'm doing better with my end than they would be.
Right.
Unless they're national. If it's national and you can get your title in the previews catalog, which is where the comic book stores order their inventory from. If you can get that put together, you're gold. But you know, as far as a guy like me, I'm in Pennsylvania. My reach is I'll do much better with a Kickstarter. That's why I go to these digital platforms.
Yeah, that makes sense. Alternative's doing good stuff. We've chatted with people from Vault, from Ahoy Comics, Aftershock.
Scout, Source Point, two big ones right now.
Yeah, Scout's doing a lot of cool stuff, and they each have their own, things that they do. Whether it's like, when instead of just going to Comixology to buy a digital comic, you go to their website and you actually own the file after you buy it from them and stuff like that. So
right.
There's a lot of cool. It's a good time for indie comics between Kickstarters and publishers and stuff. I think it's a pretty exciting time these last few years or so. For guys like you especially. So you talked about Earth Dog Studios a little bit. That's your website, right? So that's kind of like where the shared universe stuff is, right?
Correct. And basically it boils down to these two universes, which are both under the umbrella. The first is the Water Wars 2288 titles. And those are the ones like you see behind me. It typically has a female heroine, and they're like, lavishly illustrated in like a comic style. The second one is the Water Wars Chronicles. That's another run of titles in the same universe. Like I say, they all loosely connect. And that's like the one you see behind me here, where they're kind of looking hand painted and sort of, evocative types of scenes, right?
Right.
So those are the two that are getting put out pretty regularly, and I run Kickstarters on those. The big one coming up for me is March. This is Water Wars Volume 3, and it's, man, I'm thrilled to death with how it's going. Actually, I'm a little bit surprised each time. Working with some of the top letterers in the world. Now, Dave Lentz, if you know Dave, he's going to be coming to help us, and he's going to be involved in building the Kickstarter this time, too.
Wow, cool. That's
because
awesome.
What's happening is, like I say, we're kind of this loose collective, a team of comics making guys. Well, Matthias now has so many titles to letter.
Yeah.
That like we need another guy, basically.
Yeah. You need someone to help out. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, so I'm lucky. I have the right kind of problems.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a good problem to have.
Yeah.
So you got anything special planned for the next Kickstarter?
Well, yeah, there's one thing that's kind of cool. Renan sent me the original art pages, which are pen and ink, and he even like embossed them a little bit with like this silver ink. And if you've seen some of his art, it's just like a classic Renaissance style almost, and it's even more beautiful in person. And all the pages arrived, and they're essentially in perfect condition. So one of the things is we'll be selling original art pages through the Kickstarter for the first time, and I'll even be shipping them flat. They go between two things of styrofoam, and then the styrofoam's made into like a like it's going to be kind of neat. And do you like original art?
Oh, I love original art.
Yeah, Mike's a big original art guy.
I'm a big I don't really collect comics anymore. I'm all digital now, but the one thing I do buy is original art. So awesome.
I'm like that too a little bit, and I don't know how this is gonna perform. And I have to guess how much I think they'll go for. Like I don't know. Like I'm aware of the fact that we're not too famous or anything, but are they $80 pages? 100? I'm thinking
it depends on how much he spent. I mean, how much time he spends on them too. I think typically the way they price them is like, if there's some big name characters on them, if it's just a scene where that's like, okay, we're getting some buildings and some like, side characters, that tends to add to the price.
It's really easy to mess up too. I've seen guys put some up for like $250, $300. And they're like, well, it's original pages, and I'm just like, but I got an Aquaman page that I bought for less than $100. Like,
that's what. Like, I know these can't be over 100, but I don't want to go too low because one of them, it's the cover art folding out into a full wraparound of two characters. And it's like crazy level of detail. She's holding this big gun. It's really wild. But I don't know what you get for it.
Yeah, I think probably interior pages, I would say like 100, 120. But the cover page, I mean, the amount of time and detail in a wraparound. I mean, I've seen the cover pages go for over 1,000, 2,000, just because of the amount of detail and the size of the artwork too.
For real.
But anyway, I mean, that's awesome. I can't wait to see the Kickstarter. I'm going to be following you here now just to know when it's going to be announced. You said March, right?
Yeah, hopefully it'll be March 1st.
Okay.
But you can follow me now. I do put all these on my Facebook page as well. I'm Timothy B. Fling. That's Earth Dog Studios.
Okay. And
when can we expect the books to come out from Antarctic, or have they already?
Oh, already started. If you go back to what they've done, I'll just mention real quick how they do this. It's a little bit like a serial. He almost sets it up like an old-fashioned kind of comics, and he has a superhero one, Exciting Comics, and he has one that leads a little bit more towards sci-fi and robots, which is Planet Comics. So the first issue of Water Wars was released through Antarctic, and it was on number 3, and it was the cover issue too. And now the next one for us will be 8, 9, and 10 of Planet Comics this year.
Okay.
And we will be on the cover for number 8.
Awesome.
And by the way, that's Renan's cover, who's my variant guy, who's on this Kickstarter now.
Very cool.
So he's the fellow I stuck with. And that's one of the reasons why I have him doing 2 variants, because this one did so well. It was chosen by this company, Antarctic, out of all the other ones. So I'm like, okay, I got to listen to what people are wanting to see with this, right?
Right.
Which, again, is one of the reasons why you do the variant, right? You see what the market will tell you. If you release it, they'll tell you which one they like.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's true.
So
that's cool, too. Your stories seem to fit that style of that monthly anthology kind of thing. So that's really cool to get in on that.
Awesome.
And the stories lend themselves toward a little bit of like a quick tale that you can read. Like the one, it's like I say, it's about a 14-pager. And essentially the premise of the new book, she stumbles across like this ancient Chinese soldier who's driving a mech around, blowing up all the last remnants of capitalism. And she like kind of sweet talks him out of the tank and sets him on his way in a peaceful way because she's trying to be more like John Lennon. And then she travels with this assassin drone who's like an assassin robot who's always very sarcastic and wants to kill everyone. And he says, well, what happened to, that sounds like great advice. What happens to John Lennon? And she remembers like, oh, that's right. He was assassinated. Maybe he's not the best example. Right. And it's kind of one of those things. Well. And that was basically the ending.
That's awesome.
But they let the guy go. She, the Sarah Strong stories, the backup from Water Wars 2288, is that they're always peaceful characters. It's not about, like, they have to figure out what to do with their mind, sort of.
Okay. Interesting.
And it's a little bit, you could read a little bit anti-war into it, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. So you plugged your social media there, and then you have your website too, right? That's just
that's earthdogstudios.com.
Earthdogstudios.com. Tim, thanks so much for being on today. We'd love to have you back once the Kickstarter is going too, and I'm sure we'll be sharing all the links and everything for that. And we'd love to have you back to talk more about this awesome universe you built.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was a pleasure being here, and I really appreciate guys that do stuff like this. It's one of the things that I'm trying to improve on, like I can explain the Kickstarters and say what we're doing, but I still have to reach the audience, so to speak. Yeah. So I got a lot of respect for you guys for doing this.
Thanks. Appreciate
Tim, as
that.
Mike said, thanks so much, man. And to everyone out there listening or watching, I will have all those links down below to Tim's website. So check those out as well.
Thanks, guys. Enjoy your weekend.